Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the DN WhatIf 3.0 with another fanfiction. This is the second part of What If Deku was quirkless but overpowered. All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. I punched through sound barriers, keeping my eyes wide open with rage, directed squarely at the man harming Tsuyu. My mind was racing. These guys have been able to sneak into the most secure school in the world. They must have a secret. Why have they been able to stay in the USJ for over an hour without anyone else being notified? Namu, then, the giant beast who was previously crushing my teacher's skull, stepped in front of the blue-haired man as if his mother. Shit. I used the force from the punch to propel me into a spin, turning into a technique Master Bang taught me. Water stream rock smashing fist. I struck the Namu, and it knocked him back to the edge of the USJ. He broke through the structure, but as soon as he was knocked down, he punched another hole in the structure to re-enter. Wait, that was most or my strength. How could he stand up after that? Fear was felt inside me for the first time in over a decade. The fear of losing. The fear that I couldn't win. I wasn't sure. I grabbed Aizawa, 13, and Tsuyu from their clutches, defeating all the villains who were in my way. I placed them in front of the rest of my classmates. Take Aizawa and 13. I'll handle this. Ochako grabbed my arm as I was about to run into what possibly could be my death, and I stopped. Izuku. I turned around to see Ochako crying. In joy, in sadness. Thank you, and I'm sorry. I held a smile towards her and towards everyone. I can do this. I can defeat him. I faced the Namu, who was menacingly walking towards us. His body had a massive gash in it, but it healed over in a matter of seconds. Super healing. Based on him only flying a few feet out of the building, he must be incredibly heavy and be able to withstand a lot of pressure and external forces. So, is it shock absorption or shock nullification? It can't be nullified, because if it was, he wouldn't be flying off at all. More importantly, he has multiple quirks. I walked towards the Namu, to which he ran towards me. I punched him once more to clear more distance between him and me. While he did skid a few yards away from me, he still stood upright. What? Namu, kill him first. Then, we will kill All Might. Understand? The blue-haired man talked down to the Namu, as if it was his pet. If this is what he commands, how powerful is this guy? The Namu ran after me again, charging into me with his full force. All my power became available to me, and my brain started working overtime. What can I do? If his power is shock absorption, that means that I'd have to get multiple punches and kicks in. The only thing I can do is incapacitate him, because if I punch him super hard, the damage would be spread out to somewhere else. I don't know if any of these guys can take this person down. Huh, you're a smart one, aren't you, Izuku Midoriya? The man looked at my face and saw my expression. Confusion set inside me, but I moved that aside, and I knew what I had to do now. The only thing I can do is knock him unconscious. I ran towards the Namu at 100 miles per hour, getting to him in milliseconds. He tried punching me, but I was way too fast for him. I broke his spinal cord, rendering him temporarily paralyzed. He was stunned as the creature collapsed on the ground, face down. That wouldn't stop me, however. I front-kicked him into the air, and his body shot up into the air, breaking through the upper glass. As he fell, I jumped into the air to have my leg meet his head, and I did a jump front kick up his chin. His head buckled, and he was launched back into the air again, this time falling back to earth on his head. His brain exploded upon the floor, and the grunting and the punches of the beast ceased to continue. Even if his brain can regenerate, his memories and his connection to this guy will not exist. He won't be under the control of them now. He's free. The beast didn't recover, because sure enough, there was no connection established between him and the blue-haired man. The beast was lying on the floor, unresponsive. And oh, you cheated. How did you know to destroy his brain? I laughed at him. I just figured it out. Once you strip away your power, strength, you're just a child. A spoiled child. He was pissed off, and a warp gate appeared behind me. And what are you but a spoiled child? The blue-haired man appeared behind me, and I jumped out of his way and his grip. He opened his arms as if he were making a speech. You entered into one of the most prestigious schools in the world, and you got in. You sit alongside heroes, eat free meals, get opportunities no one else can get in other schools. And all it took was what? A little help from our spy. Spy? Yes, our spy. Are you surprised? No, I'm furious. I clenched my fists. I worked hard to get in, to get these opportunities. I've surpassed every barrier that has been placed upon me, and I've never turned to villainy. I don't know the circumstances of your life, but know this, just because the world doesn't care about you, doesn't mean you get to hurt it, and doesn't mean they will care about you once you retaliate. In fact, you'll be ignored and thrown into Tartarus. That is your flaw, and it will doom you. The heroes appeared shortly thereafter, and the blue-haired man said, My name is Shigaraki. Know that name as later. He stepped 1 foot through the portal and turned towards me. It shall be the name of the man who kills you. He disappeared, and I took a deep breath. Finally, that was hard. All Might entered shortly after and looked upon the destruction that was caused through the USJ. Class 1A, who came back with all the heroes, cheered. I looked towards the corpse of the beast. Within minutes, all the heroes and all the classes saw me overlooking the Namu's dead body. He defeated him in only a few kicks. My entire class cheered, but I remembered what happened to Saitama, and right when a random person came in. Well, I can't believe it was that easy for a weakling like this quirkless guy to defeat him. Everyone seemed surprised by the statement, that their cheering stopped. My lips thinned. Weakling, he literally destroyed that beast when all the heroes here couldn't. Ochako was the first to defend me. A bittersweet smile grew on my face. Well, that just means that the heroes defending us aren't that good, are they? If one quirkless weakling can defeat a beast that injured many heroes, then how are the heroes defending us any useful? The other heroes swallowed their spit, including All Might. Hey, bastard, how do you know he's a weakling? Because he's quirkless. By definition, people with quirks have to be stronger. So, if our own heroes can't defeat a threat like this, then how are we supposed to handle worse threats? Shut up, blonde. You're blonde too. Also, why? I knew what I had to do. I laughed, almost in an evil way. All the heroes looked at me, as well as the students there. Wow, Mr. Aizawa really took out a lot of the Namu's strength, didn't he? Along with 13, he tore apart his limbs, which made it really easy to kill him. Even though I couldn't see their faces, I could feel the burning hatred from the eyes of the teachers. And now I get to take all the credit. And I barely had to do anything. Man, being a student here is easy. I heard a lot of the teachers grit their teeth in anger, but when I looked back at my class, all of them looked with pure admiration. I wasn't sure. You should also probably get Aizawa and 13 treated. Wouldn't want these heroes dying on me. Otherwise, I'm not going to get those all-important fans and recognition. The teachers seemed pissed, all except All Might. He looked at me with another look of familiarity. Eventually, Aizawa was carried to the nurse's office, and I followed him and 13 while they were being carried. The nurse said, "When I said I didn't want you getting more injured, that didn't mean I wanted the teachers injured either." I sighed. "I'm sorry. Flashes of what happened yesterday night appeared, and I kept those memories in. I had no excuse not being here today. I'm sorry." Despite myself, I said that, tears running down my face. Ugh, you wouldn't be crying if that were true, would you? I was shocked out of my tears and saw Aizawa's bleeding eyes. Yeah, you're right. I couldn't look him in the eyes, and I dried my eyes up. "Now, Midoriya, here's what I'd like to ask you." He sat up against the back of the bed frame. "Why did you cover for my incompetence?" That was unexpected. Incompetence. How were I failed the very job I was supposed to do, protect you kids. That is inexcusable for me to do. You shouldn't have to do my job for me. But you did all that you could, Mr. Aizawa. He sighed. I hate to say this, but my best isn't even close to enough. His lips formed a thin line. I can't use my quirk for more than a few times before my eyes get dehydrated. And even when you guys were near death, I couldn't muster any strength to get up. He stared at himself, more his legs and chest. I've gotten too comfortable being a teacher here. Thinking that I could have easily beaten all of them was my mistake. I need to push beyond to get stronger, so no one else will be hurt again on my watch. He said that, and I could only respect him more. But the reason I made myself seem like the villain, it wasn't entirely because of you, Mr. Aizawa. He looked intently at me, but I could only see him in the corner of my eyes. Half of the reason was to not take away from what you and 13 have done. But the other reason is that I don't want people thinking that me, a quirkless person, is stronger than more experienced heroes. Memories surfaced. Of school, of friends, of life. Last time I fought back, I nearly made my family go bankrupt, which wouldn't have gotten me here in the first place. I muttered that last sentence. The world isn't rational, and they rarely are consistent with their logic. So I can understand why you don't want to fully reveal your strength to the world, even if you do want to be in this school. Thank you for. However, what about your classmates? What about your trust in them? He interrupted me again. I rubbed my neck while looking down towards the floor. Huh, what are you talking about? I trusted them with my life, and sometimes it's easier to trust someone with your life than to trust them with how you feel. Isn't that true, young Midoriya? He interrupted me again. From that sentence, I froze up. I stopped rubbing my hand against my neck. Well, that sunk in, which I couldn't help but agree with. Yeah, you rarely act consistently in front of them. Sometimes you act completely irrationally and speak your mind. Other times you are completely sympathetic to the people you talk to. However, you also seem to change your perspective from time to time. Sometimes you seem to care about the students around you, as if you were one of them. Other times you act like they are threatening you, such as when you threatened Kaminari when he asked to be introduced to Melissa's shield. My lips formed a thin line as well. Well, I've had a rough time trusting people. I'm quirkless, and many people have bullied me in my life. So of course I'm going to keep a wall between my real personality and everyone else. Can you blame me for being a little untrusting? Of course not. I'm not devoid of sympathy. I sighed, but then he continued. Having said that, what about your classmates? They trusted you with not just their lives, but also their livelihood. They could have called anyone in the school. In fact, it might have been easier. He laughed lightly. His face then became serious. However, with the last of their resources, they chose you, despite not knowing if you would save them. They chose you, despite being quirkless. They chose you, despite not knowing where you were. They chose you, because they trusted you. Not to mention how everyone voted for you as the class president. I looked up at him, and despite his bleeding eyes, I saw an unhinged passion to improve, to learn, to change. They chose you. His words left me nearly speechless. They really did give their life and happiness in my hands, didn't they? Then it hit me. I'm the class president. He smiled. Yeah. He looked tired, so he lied back down on the bed. And you've done a damn good job for your first day. I smiled as his eyes closed for the night. After the massive battle, the school was, coincidentally, almost over. So many of the students were being questioned by the press or police. I walked out near the USJ, where, apparently, no student was harmed. I sighed. Thank God. I got there in time. Then, I remembered Aizawa, and 13, still injured, which dialed back my excitement and relief. But I didn't have time to feel guilty, as the antagonizing eyes of the teachers were piercing through my skull as I continued to walk away. Then, I saw dozens of reporters and journalists surrounding a small area, which meant one thing. All Might, what did you do to defeat the Namu that took down many teachers? Did you go plus ultra, or was it easy? Did you sustain any injuries? All of them were screaming over each other, as if they were fighting for the answer that would gently fall upon their ears, whatever that meant. It felt like my ears would explode. I walked through the crowd of reporters, going next to All Might. I pushed through, and then everyone focused on me, and quieted down as I came to view. It was deathly silent. Yes, he was indeed very cool, taking down the Namu. The fight came back to me. He did it without a scratch on his body. The rush of adrenaline and testosterone coursing through my veins. The first real fight I had, without injuring the other students. I continued to flash through the scenes in my head, as I continued to lie. He destroyed it, and even though he gave his all, he could have defeated him with a single punch, but instead chose the lives of others over defeating an enemy, and sent him flying. All Might was about to contradict me, but he was prevented by the onslaught of reporters. I walked away, quite easily, now that everyone was focused on All Might, and I could hear him slightly cursing under his breath. I didn't go to my class, who were all still alive and happy, something I didn't want to change. The atmosphere felt a lot more heavy on my shoulders, as I tried to calm myself. From what? I wasn't sure. Was it my mother's health? Someone else's? I didn't know yet. Someone came to me. The weight increased tenfold when I looked at the man. Hello, I'm Detective Tsukachi. May I ask you a few questions about the villain you encountered? My guard went up once again, as I remembered what happened last night. I'm not sure I want to share it with you, Detective. I nearly walked away. How come? He looked back at me. Because I doubt your police department would do anything with the evidence I'll give you. I'll handle it myself, Detective. I started walking away. What do you mean? He walked towards me, almost chasing after me. Why would I tell you? How can I trust you? My hatred was laid bare, and I wasn't even finished. He seemed stunned, so I started to walk away again. Then, he said, I'm friends with All Might. I was disappointed by his answer. Anyone can claim that. How could I trust you, after the corruption in the police force? He had no answer. All he had were questions. What do you mean corrupt? I'll have you know that I am honest. I wasn't talking about you specifically. I interrupted him. I'm talking about the police force in general. I wanted to continue, but the memories of last night had burned into my retinas, and I could only speak very quietly. Why not? Instead of focusing on something we students and heroes can handle, you focus on the enemies lying in plain sight. He was stunned there, long enough for me to walk out of his field of view. Good grief. The suffocation calmed as I got to see a near sunset over the building. It looked incredible. I could only gaze at its beauty, something I couldn't, or at least, didn't do before. I enjoyed the peace, the quiet end of the sun today, as the sun had started to set in the west, creating sparkling after images across the buildings. Rainbows stretched across the city, and I sat on the hill, overlooking it all. Hello, Midoriya. Can I speak to you? I recognized it was Momoge Urazu. I turned around, still sitting, and sure enough, it was. Sure. What's up? She looked rather uncomfortable, looking away towards the grass. What did you feel rushing into the battle? I shrugged. I was scared. She didn't expect that answer. I was scared that I wouldn't be able to defeat him without hurting someone else. I honestly said, even though I was strong, that was the first time I hadn't prepared, and rushed into battle. It would probably not be the last. Then, how did you? How could you defeat such a monumental obstacle? I shrugged again. I just had to figure it out. I would hate for the people who wanted me to save them to fear their lives. I would suck as a hero then, wouldn't I? She looked inspired. I couldn't tell. Anyways, if something like that ever comes, at least I'll be ready. I stood up, getting enough of the beautiful sunset, and I started to walk away. Wait, I stopped and looked back at her. Why, weren't you at school today? I sighed. Aizawa's words stuck in my mind. Sometimes it's easier to trust someone with your life than to trust them with how you feel. He couldn't be more right. I mumbled that to myself. Midoriya. I looked up towards her, her embarrassment all but gone. Concern painted the edges of her expression, and her eyes no longer held that piercing, intimidating glare. They were soft, warm, kind eyes. Eyes that looked like my mother's. Like Achako. Like Melissa. Yeah, do you want to? I let my guard down to her eyes. My mom nearly died. I spent the day and night at the hospital. I said that, honestly and truthfully. She seemed taken aback. What? How? She seemed shocked, as if she weren't expecting that answer. My lips were in a thin line. I don't know. Yesterday, I found her injured, with a knife in her hand. I looked down. People are saying it's suicide, and the hard thing is, I don't know if it isn't. I finally let my guard down, fully exposing myself to whatever she would say next. Whether that be good or ill was up to her. She grabbed my hand with both of hers, and lifted it up to my face. It's going to be all right. That's all she said. All that she could say. It made me regret telling her. I hope it will. I released my hand from her grip and walked away again. Wait, would you, perhaps, like to stay with me for the time being? I was confused and a bit worried. What? You want a guy sleeping over at your house? Of course. I can't let the president of our classroom go back to a place where his mother was injured previously. That's a pretty weird reason, even for someone like her. Why would you be okay with it, though? She stammered. Then she sighed. I want to help you. You've saved everyone. The least we can do, or I can do, is give you a residence to stay while your mother is healing. So that's the explanation she has. I started to notice the subtle blush on her face. Her embarrassment, her underconfidence, her true thoughts. I shrugged. Sure, just got to tell my roommate about it. Roommate? Oh, you mean Melissa? I nodded without thinking. Wait, how did you know? She looked away once again. Both you and Melissa weren't here today, so unless you both did indecent things, you wouldn't be both away under a family emergency. Geez, I'm not the kind of person who would lie like that. I sighed, not having the energy to feel embarrassed about what she had just said. Then what kind of person are you? She said that, without warning. What do you mean? What's your foundation? You clearly have brilliance, as your designs for something as unimportant as a softball. You found an improvement for strength and durability, but what morals guide you? What guides you? I raised my eyebrow. I was a person who wanted to save others, and put a smile on other people's faces, and give hope to the hopeless. Like All Might. Those were the words unspoken. I am not like All Might anymore. Those were the words for me. Anyone could want to do that. She seemed rather confused, as if the answer I would give her would radically change her view of me. What keeps you going, even when no one will believe you or listen to you? I knew that there were some personal issues that I needed to help her out with, because despite my mother's attitude, I wasn't as oblivious as people made me out to be. But I answered truthfully, regardless. When I was down on my couch, injured, I remembered the warm and soft hands of my master. They helped me up, as my legs had given out, and a few bullies decided to pick on me that day. Then, it shifted to the eyes of my mother, happily crying to me finally succeeding. She embraced me in a way that she hadn't done before, warming me in the cold reaches of winter. Her embrace kept me warm, even in times where I was in pain, and my body couldn't heal myself. I see everyone who led up to me. My mom, my master, even Bakugo. All of them sent me on the path of becoming a hero. Even him. What did Bakugo do? Well, I swallowed. I don't really feel comfortable sharing that yet. Bakugo and I used to be friends, and he had a falling out with me. Because I was quirkless. Another set of unspoken words. That's quite all right. I texted Melissa, after asking Yaoyorozu her address, and she responded with an okay. Just don't go doing weird things to us. She might have been joking, but I groaned anyway. Why is everyone thinking that I'm the weirdo? I sighed heavily. It's going to be hard to talk to any guy after today, isn't it? An even deeper sigh left me as I walked with Yaoyorozu. Thank you, Yaoyorozu. It means a lot that you are going to take me in for now. She smiled, lighting several candles with her smile. It's quite all right. No need to talk so formally to me, however. I raised my eyebrow. We are classmates, and are going to spend many days together as classmates. If you were to refer to me formally, I have a feeling you would tire of it. I chuckled as her limousine came to view. One of her servants, a butler of sorts, opened the door for her. He had dark brown, almost chocolate hair, with it covering his forehead, and his glasses preventing his eyes from coming to view. Madam, is it all right if I could notify your parents of this man staying at the Yaoyorozu household? Well, good to see that he cares about his job. Yes, that would be all right, Rin. Before anything, he checked me, patting around my body for anything. Knowing this by now, I spread my arms, waiting for him to find nothing. Then, when he did, he wordlessly opened the door for me and Yaoyorozu, cautiously. She seemed rather confused, but went inside the limo regardless. Then, when I sat down, the butler, who I thought was named Rin, gripped the door handle of the limo rather tightly before slamming the door shut. She seemed rather confused, but I shrugged it off and looked around me. It was a plush velvet, with a red and black interior, mini televisions, and even Wi-Fi capabilities. I sat down in my normal, relaxed position, which was a straight back and sitting at the edge of the seat. All right, so how would you have me refer to you, madam? I said that sarcastically, which she didn't seem to pick up on. No need to refer to me as madam. You are a guest, not a staff member. You can refer to me by name if you would like to. I scratched my head. Are you sure you want me to call you by name? Yes, I would like that. Izuku. It felt weird hearing my name from anyone who wasn't Melissa, as she was American, and called people by their names regardless of who they were. Achako, as she had become a close friend of mine within a few weeks, and of course, my master and my mom. Okay then, Momo it is. She and I both laughed off any embarrassment that would come by referring to each other by name. We talked about technology, as I knew a lot about it, and she apparently oversaw many of the companies who made technology. The difference between us was night and day, especially in the way we talked about technology. But we continued to speak with each other, and it felt oddly normal. Despite being in a limo with possibly one of the richest people in Japan, it just felt normal to talk to her. Then, the normalcy continued even at the gate. I was pulled out of the car, again, before being checked. She seemed shocked by the sudden reaction, but went along with it, as they again found nothing. The only things I carried was a watch, a phone, and a wallet, so they couldn't find anything else. Then, this time, I was thrown back into the car, and I settled back onto the seats of the limo. Her eyebrow raised. What was that? I shrugged. Then, after a short while, we finally arrived at her house, which she called her humble abode. It couldn't have been further from the truth. There was a massive gate that we had just passed, a towering mansion, and even gold trimmings on much of the outside of the house. Then, for the third time, the servants pulled me out of the car and checked me. What are you doing? Quirkless people usually carry weapons on them, Lady Yaoyorozu, because they carry no inherent strength. What? He's a classmate of mine. Why are you? Hey, Yao, if this gives them peace in mind, then let them check me. At least they won't feel as unsafe around me. That was my hope, at least. She seemed confused by my nickname for her in that moment, but she accepted it nonetheless, and again, they found nothing. As I stepped inside the mansion, I saw the full scope of the inside. The atmosphere felt stuffy, yet at the same time, hollow, as soon as I entered the mansion, with it being so empty besides the few servants around, who all looked at me with suspicious eyes, as if they were looking for a single reason to hurt me. To kill me, even. It wouldn't be the first, nor the last. All this wealth, and you use it for this. To hire these kinds of people. My fist slightly tightened, which Momo noticed. Izuku, I snapped out of my anger, and tried to calm down. It was hard to. Are you all right? With a shaky voice, and my voice had to crack when I said that, I said, yeah, I'm fine. She was worried. I didn't like that. Though, where should I do my work? Work. Then realization set in. You mean the homework? I nodded. Why don't you do it with me, in my room? My eyes were half-lidded. Either this girl is just the purest person ever, or she's going to do something to me. She said it so casually that I couldn't think it was the latter. I mean, sure, let me just run back to the school to get my work. Carrying my bag, I ran back to my classroom before she could ask a question. I took a deep breath outside the mansion. Now that I wasn't in the stuffy, pressurized atmosphere that was her mansion. The trip was only a minute, as the school wasn't even a mile away. I didn't know why those thoughts made my fists tighten with frustration. I thought I had gotten used to their hatred and suspicion-filled eyes. I got to the school, just outside the classroom, and walked to my desk. All I could see on my desk was the piles and piles of paper on my desk. Shit. I reached up and grabbed the top papers, somehow without knocking it down. Even looking at it, it was the height of a normal person. It was my height. Looks like this is going to take a while. I sighed as I got to work. Melissa POV. I continued to sit in the hospital room of Izuku's mother. 20 minutes. That's how long it was since Izuku ran away to school. He didn't call me. At first, I was worried. I looked over at my phone, wanting to check if he texted me. No response. 30 minutes later, nothing had happened, and Elle just continued to sit next to Uncle Mike. It felt really freaking awkward, and I didn't know why. Nearly an hour had passed before he spoke to me. Melissa. The heart rate monitor of Izuku's mother continued to beep. Thankfully, since that means that she is still alive, but it made me feel so tense and uptight. like the air itself had its hand on my throat. Melissa. Yes, I'm Melissa. I jumped back in my seat as Uncle Mike said my name. He looked really confused. Damn it. Why am I so nervous? I focused back on where I was, and not my phone, which was nearly dead at that point through me constantly checking it and looking at it. Are you all right? You look to be spacing out. Oh, no, I'm all good, thanks Uncle Mike. My voice cracked in the middle of me speaking. My pounding heart and my high-pitched voice didn't agree with me. Melissa, you aren't a good liar. I sighed, relenting to give him the appearance of telling the truth. Yeah, I know. Though, regarding young Midoriya. Now, confusion filled my own face. What is it that is between you two? My eyebrow raised. What do you mean? You seem to be rather close to each other, despite just a day between your first meeting. Why is that? I sighed. It's just... The bullies' faces came to mind, making me sick to my stomach. Then, the kind smile and warm hug of Izuku came back and the sick feeling lessened. He's a really good person. Yes, he is. He smiled crookedly at me, before focusing on Izuku's mom. He didn't ask for more. I wasn't sure why, since I would only see him once a year. Every time, we'd just spend hours upon hours talking about each other and how our situation has changed from a year ago. Usually, we talked about every small thing that happened in the past year. A person that pissed us off. A new person or friend that we met or made. But now, there was nothing but silence. We sat like that for a few minutes. The sound of the heart rate monitor was the only thing disguising my nervousness with us staying in silence. As I had nothing else to do, my mind went back to his question. What? Does he think I have a crush on him or something? My cheeks become rosy at the thought, but luckily, or unluckily, Uncle Mike didn't notice. Then, several minutes later, the nurse came up to the hospital room. I'm sorry to interrupt you all, but we are ending visitor hours soon. I was slightly weirded out by the polite bow, but I nodded. We exited the hospital, where I saw a car and a person in front of a limousine. He walked up to me, sporting a butler-esque look. Are you Melissa Shield? I nodded. Good. Momo Yaoyorozu has invited you over to her abode for the time being. Is that the address Izuku sent me? Okay. Is Izuku there? The man looked like he was disgusted by something, but he nodded. Yes, he is. Wait, Melissa. Uncle Mike called out to me, right before the butler guy closed the limo. Don't worry, Uncle Yagi. I said his name, knowing his secret. To be fine. I'm not the weak person you think I am. The door closed, and the butler went to the front, shortly after checking me. Uncle Mike eyed him weirdly, but he just said, it's just protocol. That's it. The butler, now at the wheel, pulled out of the hospital. I never thought you were weak. I heard that just as the window had been brought up. And then, everything outside was silent. I smiled bittersweetly. I wasn't as strong as you thought I was, then. I looked out the window of the limo, not looking inside it, and how everything looked expensive. I looked at the city at dusk, which was a beautiful sight. The sun was setting over the water, shining a beautiful color as the sun fell in the east. It was mesmerizing. I tried to enjoy the ride, so I took out my phone and started listening to the music I had on my pocket earphones. The time went by faster than I thought, and I quickly entered the mansion. It looked so grand, like the mansions out of renders and pictures. Then, I came to the entrance of the mansion, and I entered it. I tried asking the maids and butlers of the mansion where Izuku was, but all I got was glares, then an apology. Don't apologize, just tell me where he is. But no one did, because when I asked them, they took a long time just to get back to me, saying how they didn't know where he was. These guys apologize way too much. Maybe that's a cultural thing. I shrugged and decided to find him myself. After looking through all the rooms, which many were empty, I was stuck. I tried pulling out my phone to try to find out where he was, but the GPS on his gauntlets wasn't as accurate as it could have been, and I could only track the area within a block. So if he was where they said he was in the house. Even if it was tracking him, the gauntlets I had made him weren't active, so I had no idea where he was. Then I felt a rush of wind as something, or someone, passed me by, then another as it came back. Then I saw the small heat trail, and I followed it to a door. Hello, is Izuku in there? Melissa. The door opened, and I saw the green-haired person that I came to know within a few days. He looked rather tired. Hey, Melissa. He sounded like he was on crack. Not literally, as I learned to say. What happened? You look like you are taking drugs. He chuckled. I do, don't I? I looked behind him, and I saw a confused woman behind him. She had black hair, with a spiked ponytail that made her look like a rebellious teen, rather than a part of one of the richest families in Japan. She was sitting down, eating cherries of all things. He had a bowl of cherries as well, handing it to me. Have you tried Japanese cherries? They are really good. He acted like a boy in a candy store, which made me wonder what he ate. I only looked at him with confusion. What? Why are you acting like you are in a candy store? I walked into her room, closing the door behind me. Wait, fruit isn't super expensive on my island. No, it's like slightly over $1 or 100 yen to get 30 cherries. His jaw hit the floor. Even Yaoyorozu had her hand over her mouth. Well, let me taste it. I stole a cherry from Izuku's bowl and chewed on it. It tastes pretty good. 30 cherries of these would be worth about $2, depending on whether it's labeled organic or not, because that exists. So cheap. Yaoyorozu was shocked. What do you mean? That same fruit you said was $2 would be over 6,000 yen, or about $60 here. My jaw was the third to drop to the floor. Wait, what the hell? Another culture shock. I was disoriented with how much I didn't know about Japan. Ugh, I don't want to imagine why fruit pricing of all things is so damn high. I noticed, then, the pile of papers that were in his room. What? How can they assign this to you on your first school day? He shrugged. I just do it. That's just how it is. Why is it that Japan is so different from America? I didn't have a lot of work to do, even at UA, so I just looked at my phone and scrolled down to learn more about Japan, so I didn't embarrass myself more. I searched up what I needed to learn to live in Japan. Okay, so learn Japanese writing and reading, preferably reading. Check. Don't take huge portions of foods. Check. Schooling and education, especially high school, is treasured in this country. I mean, that's not too surprising. So make sure you have an education. Yeah, that makes sense. Used items have to be in immaculate condition to be sold. What? They don't have eBay? I was so confused, even now. Japanese fruits are expensive, even if they are pretty good. Check. Food variety is huge. Okay, not a huge surprise. My eyes stuck onto one thing in particular. Wait, there is little variety of cheese. What? They have so much variety of tofu, yet no variety of cheese of all things? What? I continued to search up. Then I thought about convenience stores. Wonder if these guys have to deal with that questionable food. Wait, convenience stores have really good food? Usually, I remember just the questionable hot dogs at 7-Eleven. What? My mind was about to explode with just the short research I had done. What the hell? What happened? Momo Yaoyorozu snapped me out of my thoughts. I realized that I was still in her room with Izuku. Nothing. I'm just looking at Japanese customs. Really? What about them? Well, everything. I laughed at my own joke. She didn't. Well, what about Japanese culture do you want to know specifically? I don't know. It's just that. Sometimes, people are very subtle about their xenophobia in this country, sometimes they aren't. Right now, I'm just really confused. Xenophobia. In Japan. Well, maybe not just xenophobia anymore. They still are suspicious of foreigners in this country. But now why is it that people just talk behind quirkless people's backs and ask for their passport or ID even if you are just walking around? I not only saw it with me, but also other quirkless people. Why is that? She looked dumbstruck. I had no idea this was continuing at this moment. Then never mind. It was wrong of me too. It's partially because you look different. Izuku continued to work, but bluntly said that, what? To grossly oversimplify, Japan categorizes people into one of 4 different categories. People who are quirkless, foreigners, natives, and have quirks. It's like a Venn diagram. While finishing his work, he continued to explain to me. People who have no quirk, but native to at least Asia, will be regularly checked, but they can still set up a business and won't have to go through the incredibly complicated hassle of getting a visa, getting an apartment, renting a house, etc. Plus, with an education, you can get a decent job within the country, especially if you know English and Japanese. He finished nearly half of his papers. What? How did he finish so much in just 10 minutes? More importantly, that's what happens. People who have a quirk, but are foreigners, will have a hard time getting into the country, and some will treat them with disrespect. But if they do come into this country, many people will probably look at them in awe, as many people outside of Japan don't come here, no thanks to them. He stood up and piled more of his finished work next to his pile of unfinished work. People who do have a quirk and are natives to the country or to Asia, they will have it relatively easy as far as actual life goes. Yes, they will have to work hard to get into a job, but those opportunities are available for them. He swiped his pen, finishing his next paper in the same time it took him to explain that to me. But people who are quirkless and foreigners, well, they have to be rich or educated to even be considered for an apartment, let alone living here and being treated like shit just for being a gaijin. Gaijin. I remembered that from taking Japanese, but I never remembered what it meant. Basically, it's what we call, negatively, Westerners. It can be used to describe Westerners in general, but it comes off, usually, negative, and is almost a slur here. He finished his work, over his height, just then. Anyways, anything else? He faced towards me, carrying his papers, which were taller than him. Not really. I was in the last category. Yet, I didn't experience what Izuku described. Sure, I had been held back, and I had been checked one too many times, but other than that, I didn't experience that kind of xenophobia. Is that because of something I don't know about? I moved out of his way, and he walked to wherever he needed to go. I had no idea about this. Yaoyorozu was shocked. Neither did I. Is that why Izuku didn't seem to mind being checked and thrown back into his car? He was used to it. I shrugged. I don't know. For all I know, he could have been through something deep. She nodded. He's a mystery, isn't he? I looked back at him, still trying to balance the papers. Yeah, he is. He's gone through more than he lets on. Izuku POV. A few years ago, I saw the truth of the world for people like me. People who dare to not lie down and accept their fate as useless. I was walking home from school, toward the dojo. Okay, so I just got to say to Master Bang that I don't want to attend anymore. I'll say it's because I don't have enough time, and blame the exams. I felt really guilty, but at the same time, I felt like I was standing still. Despite me being strong, no one cared. I remembered Master Bang teaching me restraint, but it was hard not to lash out. I was so close to that day, when Bakugo tore my notebook in half and threw it out. He laughed, and I felt like showing him my strength. I wanted to hurt him, despite what my master taught me, but I wasn't restrained that day. The only thing that kept me from hurting him that day was the fact that I didn't have the chance to. He walked out of the classroom before I could hurt him, cackling about putting me down. I'm sorry, master, but I can't find time to continue. I'll try to come later if I can manage my school work, but I want to take a break. What I wanted was an excuse not to be so restrained. I wanted to show them I was strong. I wanted to show them all how idiotic that was. Hey, you're under arrest. I heard that as I walked down the road. I remembered seeing arrests ever since I was 7. But this one would scar me for my life and show me what people do to people like me. I raised my eyebrow and looked over towards an alleyway. I took my phone out and started recording. That's what my master told me to do for arrests. I saw a guy wearing casual clothes being pulled out of the alleyway towards the wall. He had blonde hair and seemed to be foreign, first speaking in English, then started speaking in Japanese. Why doesn't he use his quirk? Is it because? Realization struck me for the first time in my life. Is he like me? Hey, for what reason? He was then slammed against the brick wall. The policeman poured an entire bottle of whiskey on him, which made the man cough out the alcohol. You were driving under intoxication. What? Why did you pour that on me? I'm not drunk. Now, who's going to say that you are innocent if they give you a breathalyzer? What? What the hell is this for? If you don't stop, I'll put a fucking cap in your head. He continued to struggle, saying, Why? What did I do? A gunshot went off, and the man who was previously struggling stopped. The situation became clear. This was a murder. Stay down. That's what you deserve. Several more bullet shots were heard by me. I felt like throwing up. The man's head was destroyed. His entire body was destroyed. I shakily stopped recording, but dropped my phone. It made a clank sound as the flip phone I had at the time shattered against the concrete. My face flared up with anxiety. The police officer looked and saw a shadow where I hid behind the trash can. Hey, I ran faster than I could handle. At that time, I could only run average speeds at 6 miles per hour. I ran across the street towards an alleyway, trying to hide. If I'm caught, I'm dead. I felt like I couldn't hide anywhere. He knew that he was quirkless and took it to his advantage. What was he going to do against a kid who is even weaker? Eventually, I hid behind a trash can on another alleyway. I tried keeping quiet, but I couldn't. My body was shaking. I had my hands on the side of my head. I buried myself into my knees. I felt like I was next to go. The man shot a few extra bullets around. I'm sorry, Master Bang. So you think you can get away from me, criminal? Well, not on my watch. You are going to jail. He didn't see me. In his eyes, which I could barely see, he wasn't happy. My blood rushed to my head. I felt like I was about to pass out. I couldn't breathe. I'm sorry, Mom. Just when he was about to go near the trash can, someone appeared. Hello there, officer. Huh. The officer saw my master. Master Bang saw me, but pretended like he didn't, wearing a face of searching. Have you seen a young boy? He has green hair. He's a small child. Freckles. I was supposed to meet him earlier. I was controlling my breathing. Now that he came in front of me, I felt much more calm, and tears started to spring up from my eyes. I made sure I was quiet, forcing my sobs into my hands. The police officer put his gun back and ran off. The man seemed like he didn't want to deal with a quirkless old man, so he retreated. Find him yourself, old man, or you can get a hero. Even when he left, my sobs went into my hands. Master Bang sighed. People give no respect to the older generation anymore, do they? He looked down at me, with one knee on the ground. You saw something he did, didn't you? I moved my dirty hands away from my eyes. He looked deep into me, especially my eyes. He could always see what I was feeling. Both his knees went onto the sharp pavement, and he let me cry out onto him. He patted my head as I continued to release my frustration, my anger, my sadness. I'm sorry, boy. You weren't supposed to see that. I didn't want you to see that for years. Eventually, I stopped crying. Now, you understand why I wanted you to keep restrained? I shook my head. Why? Why do people deserve that? He didn't even do anything wrong. He looked down at me, standing up. From the corner of my eyes, I could see his grim expression. That happens. It happens. Even to the best of us. I looked up to him. I am quirkless as well. That was not the only person who they hurt. His tears sprung out, and he fell down on his knees once again and cried onto me as I did. Eventually, our tears slowed, and we stood up with heavy hearts. He walked me back home, holding my hand tight. He cleared his face of any tears, so I did the same. My mom was concerned, but my master stuck up for me, saying I was with him. After worrying and telling me to promise not to be reckless again, my master left, and I walked in with a broken phone in my pocket. I remember the next day, where the news of this broke out. The police officer reported that the man, who was unnamed, was drinking and driving. A lot of my elementary school classmates said things like, they kept saying if he didn't or if he did. As I walked down the hallway to my classroom, I heard them speak about the man. If he wasn't driving drunk, he wouldn't have died. If he wasn't resisting arrest, he wouldn't have died. If he wasn't quirkless, he wouldn't have died. None of them knew the horror that man had gone through. No one, except me. This time, I turned my eyes and ears off. I stopped listening to them. I'm sorry, master. I can't afford to be mad or angry. Otherwise, I don't want my mother to find my corpse rotting on a dead alleyway. I pushed myself to keep going to martial arts. I broke barriers I didn't think possible. People continued to call me weak, but I didn't care anymore. My eyes and ears were now fully focusing, as my master instructed me, but I felt so empty that I didn't care about their qualms with me. So I continued to wall myself from everyone to avoid lashing out. They had no idea what I'd been through. My eyes had darkened that day. They were no longer the shining green that they were just a few months ago. They had become dull. On my way home that day, I looked towards the blue sky. I'll achieve my dream. Without any of them. I'll work on my own and get there. I'll make sure that Master Bang, Mom, both of you will have someone like me you can be proud of. I'll be the person they will never dismiss as weak. Most people took one look at my dulled eyes and avoided me, calling me a creep. But I told myself I didn't care. I continued to run past them, past everyone. I won every tournament, every competition, everything. Yet I didn't feel accomplished. My life felt still empty. I felt lonely. I was 13 at the time, and I felt more empty than usual. That no one cared about me, even if my mom and my master did. I kept telling myself I was fine, but that was one of the only times I didn't tell her about anything. Luckily, or unfortunately, she trusted me, continuing to smile and embrace me, not knowing how much that meant to me at that time, and especially now. I fell to sleep, watching the moon come over my window. Then, I got out of my bed. I looked at my phone, a 1+5, and searched up something. Jobs, careers, schools, family, anything to keep me from feeling empty. Then, I saw the website for the School of All Might. Wait, UA. I remembered the first video, one from years ago, about All Might walking out of the rubble. One who, as far as I knew, just worked hard to get in UA, with or without a quirk, and became the #1 hero. He went to UA, so that's where I had to go. The only place that accepted quirkless heroes like me. A place where I could become the strongest hero. Izuku POV. I walked with my memories burying me, remembering my past nativity, thinking going into UA would solve my problems. I could safely let my guard down. I could meet people like me. I could love someone like hell it would. I sighed on my past thoughts as I was checked for a 4th time. I dropped my papers on the floor, which the butler accidentally knocked over while checking me, and stepped on a few papers. I was angry. That wasn't something I could afford to feel. I'll send it to them for grading through email, and I'll give them physical copies just so they can't lose it. They are probably going to find ways to lose it, though. So, after finding the printer on my own, I scanned my papers, sent it to all my teachers, and packed dozens of papers into my bag. I slammed against the wall, tired. Damn it. Why? A single tear left my eyes. I stopped it from going any further. This is not the time, or the place. I walked out of the printer room and walked around the mansion. I was checked a total of 10 times as I walked around the mansion. They said it was protocol. I didn't care anymore. I had gotten used to it. That's what I told myself. Anyways, maybe I can meet up with Master Bang. I decided to change into my uniform, with the belt modifications Melissa had made, including the gauntlets. Maybe I can talk to him. Melissa POV. A notification ping came. Izuku's wearing the gauntlets. Why? Then I heard knocking outside Momo's room. I opened and saw Izuku, again, wearing his uniform. Hey guys, just want to say that I'm going to my martial arts school. You're a martial artist. He seemed confused. Didn't you modify my belt? You saw that I was a black belt. Touché. No, it's not that. It's just, most black belts I know are just rich people who bought their way into the rank. Or they. He groaned. Seriously, I have to fix the perception of them too. He muttered that under his breath as he stood outside. What do you mean, Izuku? He looked up at both Momo and I. Well, I can't say anything about them. But martial arts, it's not something you should buy your way into. I remembered one guy taking off his black belt and swinging it around, like his crowning achievement, in front of everyone. But he didn't look like a black belt. Well, yeah, but I've also seen people who are not athletic at all and can barely do a split and they get a black B. What do you think a black belt is? Not what they should be, what they actually are. Well, my mind temporarily blanked out. Then I imagined it. Well, I think it is about being rich and not having enough accomplishments. He looked pissed. That's what black belts in other countries are like. I waved my hands in front of me. No, it's just martial artists haven't been taken seriously as an accomplishment for the past 40 years. Momo suddenly came in. They haven't. His anger was replaced with confusion. She shook her head. Martial arts only needs for you to fulfill a certain amount of requirements to pass, correct? He rubbed his neck. Not exactly. What do you mean? Yeah, Izuku, what do you mean? He sighed. Fine. Momo sat on the bed as Izuku sat down, legs crossed. She looked intrigued, as she did while listening to him talk about xenophobia in Japan. Even I was confused. Well, while it is true that martial arts does require testing to graduate to the next belt, similar to how schooling works, in martial arts, it's more than just knowing the material. Momo looked like she wanted to interject, but she stayed quiet. It's about being a good person. I don't know how other schools work, since they might operate under different principles, but my academy emphasizes, 3 broad ideals. First, you should be respectful of people but be willing to talk back to them when necessary. Sometimes, even adults can lose their way. He muttered something under his breath. I thought I heard him say, especially adults. Second, you should be kind to people, by listening, caring, taking in, but to be willing to act on injustice and evil actions. So, if someone does something wrong, I have to be willing to act. And the third, I spoke too soon. His features darkened. Lastly, to be willing to forgive people, even if there is nothing that you can forgive them for, because I don't, or can't, know how they have lived, or the things they have gone through, and I have to be willing to listen to and forgive them. He looked down while saying that. That is something I can't do. I don't know if I'll ever forgive some people. He muttered that under his breath. My mind went back to the police officer that Izuku and I saw. Does he mean that person? Meanwhile, Momo sported a new expression, one of curiosity. Though, is that it? He asked as he stood up. I decided to speak up. Why do you seem to not want to be around us? He raised his eyebrow. What do you mean? You seem to want to go somewhere else. What do you mean? I don't think that is what she meant, Izuku. My eyes went to Momo once again. His expression steadied, as if he expected it. I think she means, why is it you seem to be on edge, as people say, ever since you have gotten here? His fists tightened to the point of becoming white. Well, when you have had a target on your back for the past 100 years, you learn to never keep your guard down and to stop associating yourself with other people, even people who are like you, in fear of being killed for being like them, being quirkless. He turned around and walked to the door. His hand was shaking. He was scared. I'm just too weak right now to hide that right now. He looked down, and I swore I saw tears on his face. To hide it from you all, or I heard him sniffle and saw his right hand go to his eyes. To hide it from me. He slammed the door, leaving us speechless. I ran to open the door, and he was gone. Izuku POV. After the festival, I sat back at my home. It was empty. The bloodstains from my mom's injury was nowhere to be seen. As I carried in some food, I saw the girls looking at me curiously. I promised I'd give them an explanation. So, here goes nothing. After restocking the fridge and making food for the girls, I sat down on the couch we had. Momo wanted to make more chairs for us all to sit on, but I got a few of the dining table chairs for them to sit on. Everyone was looking at me for answers. Looking down, I took a deep breath. Then again, all of them were waiting for me to speak. I just had to have the courage to. The thing is, the reason I said I wasn't going to use my full strength during the festival was because my throat suddenly tightened, like someone had a vice on it. I tried swallowing to get rid of the feeling, but it didn't go away. Come on, I can't chicken out like that. Tears started leaking out of my eyes, but I quickly cleared them. I looked up. Momo looked perplexed. Achako looked with concern. Najire looked with a childlike confusion. Melissa spoke. Look, you don't have to tell us. I know. You've been through a lot. She held a pained smile. She wanted to know, but she kept it in. For me, that gave me strength. It's a long story. You guys, will you want to hear it out? All of them nodded, without hesitation. I took my final breath and continued. Remember how I'm a martial artist? They nodded again, this time a bit more reluctantly. Well, I almost wasn't one. I continued to speak. I couldn't stop myself. I wasn't always motivated solely on becoming a hero. Sometimes, I just wanted people to stop calling me weak. I sniffled, but I continued. One day, I was walking down from school. I was about to quit martial arts. I sadly chuckled. I hated being bullied. I told this to Melissa and Momo that I needed to learn and forgive. It was hard. I buried my face in my hands. I couldn't even fight back. My teacher only taught me to avoid conflicts, so I could only run away and block. Another set of tears came down, but I cleared them before anyone could help me. I wanted to show them that I was strong, that I could be alongside them, that I wasn't useless because I was quirkless. My eyes closed, preventing many tears from streaming down my face. But on my way to the academy, the dojo, I looked down. I didn't have the strength to look up. I saw a police officer who poured an entire bottle of liquor onto a foreign guy. I heard them all swallow, especially Melissa. The guy was asking why he was being treated like that, like he didn't know how people like us were treated. I swallowed, looking up with anger. He was shot 3 times for asking why he was being treated so poorly. Tears continued down my eyes. That police officer chased me, armed with a gun, ready to kill me. I lowered my head once again. If my master wasn't there, I don't even know what would have happened to me. I was scared. I cried silently on the couch. I was scared that I would have died. All 4 of the girls held a hand on my shoulder. I didn't look up. I was so scared that my mom would find me in that alley, dead. I continued crying out. The years of emotional turmoil that I felt, the loneliness, the pain, the sorrow, everything was shown to them. I wasn't strong enough to keep it in or to keep going. Eventually, my tears slowed down. After a few more deep breaths, I looked up at them. Momo was the first to speak. When did this occur? Izuku. Yeah, I think I was 9 or 10. They all looked horrified. You have been carrying that for 5 years. Achako spoke. Yeah, Melissa then embraced me. First, that police officer. Now this. You've been through a lot. She whispered it in my ear. Yeah, I nodded on her shoulder. They all slowly embraced me. Achako was the second. I'm sorry, Deku. Then, Nejire embraced me. You have been through so much since then. Momo hugged me last. I'll make sure to find out who's done this. I was on the brink of collapsing. I couldn't stay strong, but eventually, I gained the strength I had back, and they eventually stopped hugging me. I pulled my old phone out of my pocket. What's that? Melissa was confused. I looked at it grimly. That is the constant reminder I have. That is what happens to the quirkless, who dare question anything about the system. I sighed. While that guy was there, my master had told me to record anything I see that's off. I nodded to it. That had the video of the person who was shot and killed in cold blood. Had. What do you mean? Momo held a finger up to her chin, thinking. The phone was so destroyed that the storage itself was corrupted. So much so that nothing could have gotten off the phone. So, I don't have anything. I swallowed again. That has been sitting in my pocket, weighing me down for so long. Melissa then picked it up. Huh, she looked intense. I saw her brain already going through something. I might be able to get something off it. I have a bit of hardware and software knowledge, so I might be able to get something off of it. I looked down. If you can. Thank you, Melissa. That would mean a lot to me. My heart felt like it was being squeezed. It would mean a lot to a lot of people. She nodded as she got to work. Midnight POV. I had my fists tightened as I looked at his feet. He beat me, even with my quirk. He thinks he's special for being a hero, doesn't he? A snarl passed my lips. Aizawa, what were you thinking? Why did you pair him against me? What is going on in that mind of yours? How did Nezu agree with this damn thing? I grouped him with Midnight to teach him a lesson about non-violent conflicts. Conflict? What do you mean, Aizawa? Nezu was always the inquisitive principal. I stood up again, trying to release my quirk again. He needs to learn how to control his emotions and keep them from clouding his judgment. And he'll need to learn how to change hearts and minds with or without strength. He knocked me down again. I had no reason to fight. Kaminari was already past the gate. They already announced that he and Kaminari had passed. I was pissed. Geez, you think you're so strong because you can't be affected by my quirk, don't you? He looked at me with dead eyes. I didn't stop speaking. You took credit for the hard work and time Aizawa, 13, did to keep you safe. All to make you more privileged. All to inflate your own ego. You got lucky to get into one of the best schools without a power. Now you took advantage of. Shut up. Midnight, just shut up. He walked away, covering his ears. I stood up, angrily. Why don't you accept the truth? You have no power. You aren't special for having super strength. Stop acting like you are high and mighty because you can destroy a robot. You couldn't use your strength against Bakugo. Where was your strength there? He sighed. Then, he removed his hands from his ears. No amount of strength will convince you that I deserve to be in this school. No amount of intelligence, no amount of speed. Why is it that I'm a second-class student? Because I don't have any powers. Second class? What the hell are you talking about? Also, that's off topic. Tell me, Midoriya, why hold back strength? Why look down on people like us? People who master their abilities to become strong. People who had to work hard to master different abilities. And you got it so easy going. He looked down on me, like I was the naive one. It took me over a decade of non-stop work to get here. It wasn't as easy going as you thought it was for me. I could tell it took nearly all of his mental strength to keep him composed. I wasn't listening to what Midoriya was saying. I was too rage-filled. Even still, why did you not show your full strength? Why do you think you're better than someone for not showing your full strength? I heard him swallow. The last time someone like me showed their full strength, and showed everyone that they weren't a piece of shit to be taken advantage of, they were killed. My eyes widened. What? The last time that someone like me just asked why he was being treated badly by the system, he was killed. Both times with the killer masquerading as an enforcer of the law. What? Is he talking about police officers? Or heroes? Surely not. Doubt in the very system I trusted started to seep into my mind. Surely he must be lying, right? The person he was talking about must have been a criminal, fighting against the law. One of them was my teacher, the one who trained me to be who I was and made me as strong as I am. He was over 100, a quirkless hero, a veteran in the hero industry, and they let him die in my hands. That shocked me. What? My mind couldn't come up with any excuses. You are right. I'm powerless. I'm nothing special. I'm quirkless. He darkly chuckled before turning around. So no amount of strength or speed will change society and how they view people like me. No amount of strength, intellect, or even results will make people respect me on a basic level. I saw tears fall from his eyes. He covered them, however, before many could fall on the floor. Unlike you guys, I don't have a quirk to make people care about me. He looked up towards the sky. No, he was looking beyond it. Beyond everything. So everything. I'll work for it. Without fail, I will become a hero. To inspire people like me to rise up and become a hero. He snickered. I don't have such childish ambitions like Bakugo. To be superior, just to make myself happy. Not anymore. I've learned. He turned towards me. Tears dotted his face. So did scars and dark circles. His physique had been worn down. Scars were dotted around his arms, as were bruises. I didn't pay attention before. I didn't even see it beforehand. I was no longer blinded by rage. I'm going to free the quirkless from the shackles that have held them for so long, and give them the light at the end of the tunnel that all of them need. I'll give them hope. Everything else doesn't matter. His fist tightened, and he had a look of determination to share with it. I am the strongest hero. All I need to do is prove to the world that I will save them and be the hope for the world. I almost saw lightning envelop him. That was only the fraction of his soul peeking out. I shook my head. Then it disappeared. He walked away, leaving me to think on what he said. A look into the future. Izuku, how are you doing? I hope being a new hero hasn't worn you down. Despite my words, Izuku gave me a simple peck on the lips. He stepped away, just in front of his office. Nah, no amount of work has been enough to tire me down. Midnight. Come on, call me by my name. Izuku, it's been a while since we've been in this relationship. I was almost disappointed. Sorry, Nimuri. It's still rather weird to say it like that. I had a smug look on my face. Well, I can't wait till you scream it later. I tried teasing him. Not funny, Nimuri. His deadpans were my new fun thing. Call it old age, call it sentimentality, but I loved teasing him like that. Oh, you're no fun. I said it with a smile on my face. We walked to the train station, trying to avoid the rampage of fans. Luckily, it wasn't really crowded, so no one recognized us. He looked forward into the sunset that was setting over the ocean. Usually he's swarmed by either one of those pussycat girls, or by one of his actual girls. I smiled. It's still nice to speak to him like this, though. I had a soft smile on my face. So much has changed since then. After the train, Izuku and I walked, as he went on a detailed description on what his work entailed today. I looked into his eyes. They were just as bright as on that day. I wished I could have gotten this moment back then with him, before all of this happened. But it would seem weird for a 14-year-old to be handing out with people my age. At least now, it's a little more normal. You okay, Nimuri? I snickered. Yeah, I just love the passion and fire in your eyes. He got embarrassed, finally, and he made me laugh again. Though, anyways, I need to stop here. I stopped in front of my house. You sure you don't want to spend the night? I wouldn't mind a man being with me tonight. I was still teasing him. Then, he did something unexpected. He kissed me on the lips against the gate of my mansion. It lasted a few minutes. I was out of breath. He wasn't even blushing from doing that. Maybe another time, Nimuri. I couldn't even be mad at him leaving me at home. That night, I didn't sleep for well over an hour. Who knew he'd turn the R18 hero into a love-struck teen? I chuckled to myself. God, I love him so much. I eventually drifted to sleep, him on my mind, carrying me to my dream world. That day, I was at the brink of death. But Izuku, he saved me. Thank you, Izuku. You've saved me and opened my eyes. In my heart, Momo POV. Izuku was a person that, I thought before yesterday, was an anomaly. A boy capable of running upwards of 100 miles per hour. One who could beat many in strength. A person who harbored intellect with incredible adaptivity. I never thought, before yesterday, he held so much weight on himself. Today, I saw him truly crushed with all that weight. He walked in just before the bell, with sorrow carved into his face. His eyes were pink with tears. His uniform was unkempt and unfulfilling of a student at UA. He sat down on his chair and didn't look at anyone. He couldn't, almost. I tried to distance myself from the negative thoughts, but they continued to haunt me. He's been through something, hasn't he? Why? I kept repeating the word, why, in my head. Why was Izuku so rage-filled? Why did he not come to my home last night? Why was he so afraid of showing his true strength? Most importantly, I clutched my chest slightly. What happened to that warm fire in his eyes? All I could see was a raging inferno, struggling to be contained. Not the kind fire that was concerned about his enemy's well-being. Not the kind that made him a symbol of hope. No, he was on the brink of snapping. The UA festival was coming up, Mr. Aizawa announced. Despite the attack on the school the day prior, they wanted to continue with the event. The festival that was comparable to the Olympics of the old days would still take place, where we'd all have the chance to show our skill set that we have currently, and show the hero agencies what we were made of. Izuku, he didn't look at any of it. It was like he was somewhere else, thinking about something else. By noon, he stood up from his desk. Instead of being ecstatic for the event, he just looked at everyone before speaking. We are all going to compete for the #1 spot. We're all going to fight. Despite his simple words, his voice was magnetic, making everyone look at him and stopping their squabbles. No matter who wins, we are all in this together. We will fight alongside each other and against each other. His words only aroused confusion. They were so obvious. Give it your best, because I'm going to try to. You guys, push yourselves. A fake devilish smirk grew on his face. I will face one or all of you at some point, so make sure you try your hardest, otherwise, I'll hand your asses to you. My eyes narrowed at his language, but I saw his point. Don't worry about that, Deku. I heard Bakugo snarl, even from here, looking in the opposite direction. I'll hand your ass to you, instead. Do you hear me? Bakugo's rage was much more uncontrolled, compared to Izuku's. His fire in his voice stemmed from hatred. Hatred of everyone else, and himself. Bakugo, the only way you'd win against me is if I let you win. There wasn't malice in those words. He didn't even have any weight behind it. I didn't think he even believed it. With his tone being so fragile, it could shatter any second. Why say something you don't believe? What did you say? I'll kick your ass. Save the theatrics, Bakugo. I came in to interrupt. Ochako then spoke, with her gaining a magnetic voice. Let's crush it. The sports festival. I could see the words, menacing, surrounding her. A slight bit of fear came to mind when I looked at her normally circular, joyful face filled with absolute fury. Everyone raised their hands with Ochako, except for Izuku. He looked at her curiously as she raised her hand into the sky. Afterwards, he walked back up, past the rest of the students, to Ochako. Luckily for him, it wasn't very crowded. Izuku, you have a lot of questions to answer. I eventually caught up with them. Right when Izuku was speaking, walking down the hallways with Ochako, Izuku started speaking. Unless you are doing this to hurt people, you have no reason to be ashamed of being a hero. I told you that already. Izuku continued, interrupting Ochako. He sounded like a father scolding their child after apologizing too many times. It sounded bizarre hearing him speak like that. I know. I started to walk normally as they moved ahead of me. Though, I understand the part about being told to follow your dreams instead of helping them out. My mom said that a lot. He sadly chuckled, scratching the back of his neck. She says she didn't get the chance to follow her dreams since she had a rough childhood, so I should get the chance to follow my dreams. He no longer sounded like the perfect person he was in the beginning. He just sounded sad, which was the bizarre part. Eventually, I entered the cafeteria, with only Ochako both sitting at my table. Where did Izuku go? Oh, All Might ended up asking him to sit and have lunch with him. I raised my eyebrow. What? Yeah, she chuckled. He sounded like a meek schoolgirl asking him for lunch. Not the #1 hero. She and I are in relative silence. I decided to break that silence. Ochako, do you notice anything bizarre about Izuku? Well, he's managed to close the distance between you two. She noticed me using his name. I blushed, but I asked her the question again. What happened to Izuku? She shrugged. don't know. Her lips became a line, with the lack of understanding on her part. He sounds a lot more expressive, like more genuinely expressive, but it feels like he's constantly forcing it. He's still forcing it. My eyes narrowed. What do you mean? While eating the rice with her chopsticks, she said, he's clearly been acting weird. He felt a lot more unguarded to me and to others, but more like he's trying to seem normal so people can trust him. Taking it all in, I said, I see. That's bizarre. She continued to eat while speaking. The sad thing is, he's been doing this since day one. It feels like he has a different personality depending on the person he talks to. Is that not what social norms call for? She shook her head. It's not just about that. One moment, he acts humble like he's a mere bystander who is unable to do anything except listen. Other times, he acts arrogant, like he's better than others not to be rude to him. She started comedically waving her hands in front of her, but her voice felt scratchy, in pain. It feels like, sometimes, he's acting fake, like he tries not to have his own personality, and just tries to make everyone comfortable by changing to what people like, even if it isn't what he likes. I think that he's worn out now, trying to seem invincible. I was surprised by her analysis. She's much more intelligent than I gave her credit for. I never understood it like that. My mind started to piece together all of the moments I saw with him. His arrogant expression as he was walking up to the weight training. It's like he was trying to excite himself. He believed in himself at that moment. But did he believe he would pass, even if a few details were missing? That mentality of changing his personality depending on who he was surrounded by made sense, though, was the smile he gave after finding out Ada and Bakugo were both safe. Fake. My lips became unusually thin. I was almost expecting no, hoped her to say no. She shook her head once again, as she continued to eat all that she could. If it were, she was still talking while her mouth was full. Why would he ask about it in the first place? He's the one who dove in to save them, after all. Why would he save them for show? It's not like he got a benefit out of having a broken arm from saving you and passing out. In fact, he still wasn't the best hero rated. Ada was. The thought of him breaking his arm to save me made me all the more confused. I couldn't come up with a reasonable, rational explanation for how he acted. He cares about the people around him, but he also blocks himself from ever connecting with many others. He feels lonely, but rarely tries to remedy that. He is supportive of even people he doesn't like, but likes to antagonize them as well. He's very confusing. Momo. Yes. I slowly looked up. We should probably finish our food soon. Otherwise, we are going to be late for class. I nodded, quietly and quickly finishing my food. Who are you, Izuku? That question continued to haunt my mind. Izuku POV. I sighed, as I finally settled into the teacher's lounge that All Might invited me into. So, what happened? All Might's expression was grim, displeasure filling his eyes. He plopped down onto the couch, ungracefully lying back. My current limit, now, is 2 3/4 of an hour. My eyes narrowed. Really? Why did it shorten that much? You didn't have to fight. He sighed. 2 reasons, young Midoriya. 1. The muscle flexing I do takes a lot of strength out of me. So even if I don't do work, increasing to that size takes a lot of muscle strength out of me. Then why do you do it? I interrupted him. If it is impractical and ends up reducing your time that drastically, then why do it? Well, I have to, for now, maintain that shape. My strength. It's disconnected from that form. But no one will see this, he pointed to himself in his casual state, as All Might, a symbol of peace, looking like a skeleton. I sighed. The second reason is the ugly bastard who made me like this in the first place. He lifted his shirt again. The same injury, where his stomach was destroyed, along with many of his other organs. That guy put a mark which continues to slowly drain my strength. I saw the effects. Even from a few weeks ago, I could tell he had weakened. His chest became a lot less bold. His ribs were starting to become visible, and it looked more pale. Unless he becomes incapacitated, or I die, he will continue to drain my strength, little by little. He let go of his shirt, letting it fall back on top of his scars. A few weeks ago, I could handle 3 hours. Now, I can't do that anymore. I understood. So, besides that, I ate the meal that I had picked up from a local restaurant. What do you want me to do? I want you to carry my legacy. I'm sorry, I can't do that. I immediately spoke. He groaned. What happened? I do believe that your mother is fine. That isn't the first time that has happened. Her being attacked, I mean. His calm, lackadaisical attitude fell away. She's been attacked. More than once. We had, one time, kids throwing stones at our house. Some of them hit her head, and I came back to a vandalized house, and my mom had a minor concussion. Shock enveloped him. He looked, horror and confusion filling his eyes. What? I sighed. I lived in a neighborhood, surrounded by people who had powerful quirks. Up till I was 4, I've had good friends. Bakugo would be a bit rude, but never mean. I closed my eyes tightly. That all changed when everyone started getting a quirk, except me. People started bullying me, but because I was too meek to say anything about it, they walked all over me. For over a decade, memories, long buried, haunted my mind. I didn't cry, however. I was at least that strong. One time, a few older guys they decided to throw rocks at my house. When I came from school that day, she had a concussion, and all of the windows were completely destroyed, along with the drywall. They got no punishment for hurting her, and they would try many more times. My teacher, my master, had told me to control my anger and use my words, but all that did was make the guys throw stones at me. I lifted up my own shirt. On top of my stomach, which was now muscle, were many scars. I kept it hidden from everyone. Even my mom didn't know about them. Without me saying anything, All Might understood what I meant. I let go of my shirt and let it fall back down to my waist. My self-control hadn't waned yet, but my throat started to be laced with thorns. He was just as frustrated as I was, but he kept it in because he wanted us to both be safe. At that moment, I felt so utterly useless. I couldn't be the hero that they wanted me to be. No matter what, the people around me were getting hurt because of my dream and my ambitions. My mom, my teacher, my friends, and I couldn't do anything about it. Regardless of whether I continued this path, the people around me would continue to suffer. Because of me. He patted my back. You have been through quite a bit more than I have, young Midoriya. He stood up. But being a hero is fighting for what's right, even when you don't need to. Even when it seems impossible. That is the essence of being a hero, young Midoriya. And that is something I see in you, more than anyone else. There is a reason I listened to you on that beach. You carry the people's hearts and souls on your shoulders. I looked up. Even without his strength, I saw a fire in his eyes, ones that I hadn't seen in anyone. The fire of starting weak, but never giving up. I saw myself in the void that was his black-filled eyes. When you enter the stage, make sure you make your presence known. You will be the hero that will surpass me. You will be quirkless and the strongest hero, and you will make the whole world know about it. They will not take anything from you when you stand on that stage for your speech. You will make sure of that. His hands were on my shoulders, and he looked through me, trying to find any hesitation. I wasn't going to give him any. I will become a hero. I will become one. I stood up and looked him in the eyes, with the little strength we both had left. I looked up to him with my own fire. I won't give up on my dream. I will become a hero, beyond any other. Those were words that I would never regret. Izuku POV. I chuckled at Bakugo's response a while ago, before this whole thing. Hatred, sorrow, all of it. None of that matters once you're at the top. If anything, it matters even more, because you can't screw up. You don't have time to, because everyone is looking up to you for everything. I started thinking like All Might at that time. I didn't know why I thought about it right at the starting line of that race. I saw all of the people beside me. Todoroki, Ochako, Momo, Ada, Kaminari, Bakugo, Kirishima, and even more people who I didn't even know their names. I had to beat all of them to even be considered having a chance at being a hero. So, that's what I'll do. A sly grin appeared on my face as I remembered what happened just minutes ago. Midnight reluctantly calling me to speak, present Mike muting my mic, and conveniently having technical issues until my speech was already over. If they'll play that game, I'll have to beat them at it. You know who I am, as I'm the talk of a lot of people. I chuckled to a silent audience. They weren't amused. I'm Izuku Midoriya, of Class 1A. My expression matched that of what it was on that stage. And I will compete with you all, and we all aren't allowed to lose today. So come on, give it the best you've got. We are all going out there as students, and we will come out being closer and closer to being a hero. So go on. I held my arm up and tightened my hand into a fist, almost punching the sun. Remember the reason you came here, to this school. Don't ever lose sight of that goal. I stepped forward, like a commander, commanding over hundreds of soldiers. That fist went beyond all of them, towards the beginning of the race, onwards to become a hero. I lifted my fist as everyone did with me then, as the metaphorical checkered flag dropped, and everyone ran forward in the race. We ran, and as the barricade of students started to form, I ran above them, jumping over them, landing from the back to the front of the race. Of course, they'd try to trick us in the first bout. No way any more than a few people would exit that at a time. I looked behind me, and few managed to pass the swarm of students. I'm going to beat you, Todoroki said. I wasn't going to respond, since I didn't have to. Talk, that was cheap. Actions, those weren't as cheap. Seconds later, the next filter came along. The giant robots from our first test. I pushed my entire strength into my legs. I need to be smart about this. I struck their legs, causing them to lose their primary support. They started falling down, being unable to stand up, and I took advantage of that. I did a double flying psychic through all of the robots, frying the circuitry with the speed and heat of my movement. They were all decimated, but in no time, I continued my pace and ran past them all. I could have just destroyed their legs, making it impossible for most of them to get up above it. I remembered that man's face, the expression, when he was treated unfairly and was shot till death for asking why. It was sickening, but it kept me looking forward. I don't have the ability to play dirty. I continued running past all the students and was about to go forward. That was, before seeing a cliff before me. I stopped a mere millimeter before it. God damn it. Of course, they made this harder. I muttered as I looked at the deep chasm below me. It looked to be hundreds of meters deep. I looked behind me for the first time in a while. I was ahead of everyone, but not for long. Looking ahead once again, I took a deep breath. I'll make sure to be number one. I walked away from the cliff and mapped the path in my head. Sorry, master. I won't be able to use the techniques of yours for this. I promised I won't forget it. Swallowing, I ran forward over the cliff. I can't land heavy or these things might collapse. I continued jumping across the platforms, landing as lightly as possible and causing no damage to any of the platforms. It felt like I was a frog jumping across lily pads. I sure looked like it when I was basically hopping like a frog across the platforms. I sighed in relief, looking at all the platforms intact and with me on the other side. But I had no time to be relieved. I had to continue forward. Just as I was about to run, a mine exploded under my foot. I used the momentum from the bomb to launch myself backward. But as soon as I landed, my entire body was shaking with the force of the mine. Shit, come on, do they want to kill their students? I sighed, relaxing my shaking fingertips. This is the last challenge. I have to be careful. I kicked a bit of dust onto the mines, and surprisingly, none of them went off. It could be because they aren't that sensitive. Wait, that wouldn't make sense, would it? I started mapping out the entire path in my head. Considering the fact that they have to easily do this, and they have to easily replenish it, someone down the track would have to be lazy and eventually start making a pattern. I just have to figure out what it is. I went forward till I hit my first landmine, then jumped back. Then I kept doing it, looking at what I needed to do. What is he doing? Some of the people would think. I imagined the whole world looking at me, with only a few scratches on my skin after literally landing on landmines. How is he even alive? Some would probably ask, and I would probably say, thinking through things and being smart. But really, it was just me going in blindly, hoping for the best and thinking after about what I should do. And that's what I got. I mapped a pattern on the floor, and I marked it deep into the sand. There were indents in the floor, so I could tell what the safe path was. It would be erased as soon as I ran across from it, however, so they couldn't say I was cheating. My hands were still shaking, so I stopped moving, trying to concentrate. As the pattern was made in my head, I closed my eyes and just listened. The beating of my heart, the cool wind, the whole world was looking at me with my hands shaking. One breath in, one breath out. I did that till I relaxed, but also till I couldn't hear the sounds of silence anymore. Bakugo, Todoroki, they were catching up. So were the rest of the students. I heard the explosions and the growing ice rapidly approaching me. Like footsteps, I could hear them charging towards me. I could almost see it happening behind me. Hey DISCLAIMER, Idash, not today, Bakugo. Before he could even fire a blast, I jumped into the air, and midway through the turn, I looked back at him, looking at him with my own eyes. I'll beat you, here and now. Facing forward, I jumped across the landmines and launched myself across. All of it seemed random, but it really wasn't. True randomness doesn't exist. No computer or even human could make it. So they would follow a pattern of some sort. Luckily, the person who made it wasn't good at making complex patterns. There were sailboats in the sand, made of landmines. They were shaped like upside-down and right-side-up sailboats. And that's what I took advantage of. I jumped across the top of the sail's mast and kept jumping on that position, launching myself further and further ahead. I felt like I was flying, with how high I flew into the air, hitting those mines. But eventually, I passed it, with only a few scratches. 'Tis but a scratch, I guess they would say. The winner is Izuku Midoriya. I almost laughed at Present Mike's surprise. And the runner-up is a tie between Katsuki Bakugo and Shoto Todoroki. Feel like he was more enthusiastic about them winning. No duh, I thought to myself. He was one of the people who said I wasn't strong enough, even after taking down a 0-pointer. I sighed, but looked up with a smile, standing tall. The fight had just started, and I had a great start. I saw, out of the corner of my eyes, Bakugo's rage, directed towards me and Todoroki. I ignored it. Anyways, a great start to the festival. A great start indeed.